I wanted to take just a few seconds and talk about why we're making these DVDs. For many people, Poomse practice is fun. It's good exercise. Some people like to compete with Poomse practice. Some people think of Poomse practice as well, they have to learn this Poomse as part of what they need to know to get their next belt. But if you look at the movements, each movement in our Poomse, each one of them has many effective self-defense techniques associated with them. And they all came from older forms that used to be called kata. What we call Poomse today used to be called kata many years ago. All of the Poomses and all the movements in the Tae Kwon Do forms today came from these old katas. Now, the different movements, high block, inside block, all of these are thousands of years old. They were tested in the crucible of battle over years and years and proved very effective. Empty hand against weapon or empty hand against empty hand. And now we have those preserved in our Poomse. But to really understand the Tae Kwon Do forms and understand where the self-defense is in them, you need to know a little bit about the history. We're not going to go in very deeply right now because it really goes beyond the scope of this DVD. But you really need to know the history of where our Poomses came from to really understand how to look at a Poomse that maybe you've never even seen and pick out the effective self-defense techniques in it. If you can do that, then we've met our goal by doing these DVDs. Now, think about around the year 1905. Before that, the karate kata were strictly used for conditioning the body and teaching self-defense. Around 1905, karate was introduced into the Okinawan school system, and a whole new aspect of training was introduced that didn't focus so much on deadly techniques, for the same reason that we don't give kids guns and knives to take to school today. But it focused more on developing character, developing the mind and the body. The Do aspect of Karate Do or Tae Kwon Do. But the movements are the same. Even though the Poomses have been changed around, the individual movements are the same. Now, one of several aspects or several reasons for practicing the old kata was to develop muscle memory, reaction, so that you do a technique that's extremely effective without thinking about it. If you know the technique and you're thinking about that technique as you practice your form, and you've practiced that form thousands of times with proper speed, proper power, proper execution, and in your mind you know the effective technique that you're doing, then you're much more likely that if you're in a self-defense situation where your life might be depending on it, or your children's lives, you're much more likely to execute that technique effectively so that it works. But if you don't know the technique and you're taught that this is blocking a low kick, or this is blocking a high punch, and your fist comes back here for reverse movement, that type of thing. Those are the old Shotokan definitions, which were passed on and taught in the Korean Poomse. Now, I'm not saying that this is wrong to block a low kick with this technique, but that's not what the original applications were. Now, we're going to go over some of the original applications, and I hope that you'll find just a whole new way of looking at Poomse by watching these DVDs.